What is up, Packers fans? Happy Thursday. Welcome into an all-new episode of the Pack-A-Day Podcast. I'm your host, Andy Herman. You can follow me on Twitter at Andy Herman NFL. You can find the podcast at Pack-A-Day Podcast. Thanks so much for finding us today. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for being a part of this crazy 365-day-a-year journey that we call the Pack-A-Day Podcast. I always appreciate you guys a ton. Today, we're going to be going over Micah Robinson, his fit with Green Bay, and of course, our huge deep dive into who he is, what he can hopefully become, and what he might bring to the Packers in 2025 and beyond. Before we get there, a couple pieces of news and notes from Wednesday. Let's start with everyone's favorite topic. Taylor Elgma, the potential Packers rookie tryout quarterback that was at rookie minicamp on a tryout basis. There are reports out there that he is potentially signing with the team. Now, Pro Football Talk had a report on it, and then that was basically sourcing another report that was saying there was an offer that was presented. But as of recording this, I have not seen anything definitive that Taylor Elgma has officially signed with Green Bay. There's not been a Rappaport or a Domovsky or a Schefter or anything like that that's officially reported on it. But it does seem like it might be trending in that direction, and it does sound like there is an offer out there for Taylor Elgma. Now, the reason I'm just taking it slowly with it is because with Elgma, he has that tryout with Buffalo this coming weekend. He could wait to see how that goes with Buffalo and then decide between the two teams if Buffalo also makes an offer. He also, remember, was taken in the, I think it was 18th overall, somewhere in that range of the CFL draft. So he does have options. I would expect if he gets that offer from Green Bay, that he would probably just take it. If you get an offer from an NFL team, usually, and you're a tryout guy, you're not a priority undrafted free agent from teams, you usually probably are just going to take that at first glance as soon as you get that offer. But we'll see. We'll kind of keep an eye on it. And if he does officially sign, I'm sure we'll talk about it in the coming days here. But there does seem to be an offer out there. As I talked about with the rookie mini camp breakdown, there wasn't much that you could potentially glean from that entire situation. But he was impressive in what we did see. I thought he had a live arm, which Matt LaFleur talked about. It looked good. It looked crisp. It looked like he was, accurate with it when need be. He did that little net drill. He hit the net multiple times. So again, what I saw, which again is extremely minimal, but you could tell there was something there. And it would have been somebody that, for me, you don't have really another option as a number 4 QB right now. Yeah, bring him in, see what he can do in minicamp and OTAs and kind of go from there. But we'll see if he ultimately signs with the team and what becomes of that if he does become potentially the number 4 quarterback to kick things off in the OTAs and minicamps in the next couple weeks here. Meanwhile, everyone's favorite topic, Jaire Alexander. Is a resolution expected? Well, per Jeremy Fowler, maybe there's an update? Question mark. All right, so this was the blurb from Jeremy Fowler, ESPN. He wrote an entire article of intel from the NFL draft, and he wrote a little blurb for every single team of intel that he heard during sort of the draft process and things like that. Well, for Green Bay, he talked about Matthew Golden, a couple other things. Definitely check out the article again over on ESPN.com. But he wrote about Jaire Alexander as part of this as well. Quote, the Packers passing on cornerback for the first 6 rounds seems to signify that Jaire Alexander is staying with the team, barring a unique trade offer or a contractual stalemate. The Packers and Alexander are working on a resolution that should materialize soon. A revised contract for Alexander, who's due $17.5 million in cash this year, to balance his injury history with his longtime status as an elite corner, might be the most sensible play. That's the update. Now, a lot of people immediately jump to the conclusion of Jaire's back. There's a resolution right around the corner and they're working towards it and we should hear something soon. That could be the case. Very well could be the case. All right. This is just, again, where I feel like this entire Jaire situation has been, that it doesn't feel like any one person has a perfect grasp of this entire situation. And I think that's because I'm not sure that the Packers or Jaire Alexander or Jaire's agent or anyone in the situation has an entirely perfect grasp of the situation. But here's how I would read some of this and just be cautious. Do what you want. If you want to believe he's back, believe he's back. If you want to say, hey, I'm not sure about this still, feel that way, that's fine. Here's where I would say just be careful, because there's 3 different phrases in here that don't give me a ton of confidence that maybe something's right around the corner. The first sentence, the Packers passing on a quarterback for the first 6 rounds seems to signify that Jaire Alexander is staying with the team. It seems to signify. it feels like there's not definitive reporting here, just more like, hey, it would seem to signify they'd keep Jaire around. It's more of like a common sense reading between the lines sort of things than a report. Could be wrong, but you would say like, if you knew something, right? The Packers passing on the cornerback for the first 6 rounds indicates, and per sources indicates that the Packers are working on something with Jaire Alexander, something like that. But instead it says seems to signify. Then later it says the Packers and Alexander are working on a resolution that should materialize soon. Not necessarily it's right around the corner that it will materialize soon, but it should materialize soon. And then at the end it said, to balance his injury history with his longtime status as an elite corner might be the most sensible play. So a revised contract, but ... might be the most sensible play. It might be. It might not be. Well, I mean, again, I would just be cautious with the wording here. And yes, I know that I said the 0.01%. It's probably right now 50-50, right? This could go in either direction. Your guess is as good as mine. Don't have a sense of it at this point, one way or the other. I know a lot of people are now taking victory laps saying Jaire is going to be back, and maybe he will. And that when that happens, that happens. As I've said for a while now, I don't have a horse in the race. If he's a Packer, I'm going to just hope that he stays healthy and plays great. If he's not, I'm going to hope that he doesn't go to another team, specifically the Lions, Bears, Vikings, or some other NFC contender, and go, of course, and have a all-pro year with them. We'll see what Green Bay decides. This is one where I can understand both sides of it. And to me, there's no perfect answer. And I've said this all along, if you sign him back and you pay him whatever amount of money and he's his usual sort of injured self that he has been the last 4 years, it's a really big problem. It's a nightmare situation. If you let him go and he doesn't get hurt and he goes on to have an all-pro season somewhere, an unbelievable season somewhere, specifically in the division for a big-time NFC team, that is a nightmare situation. You basically are hoping for one of two things. A, that you release him, or a trade where you get something good in return is a great situation. But you're hoping for one of two things. The best, of course, is that he comes back, you pay him, and he's awesome, and he plays throughout the year. There's no question asked. That's the best case scenario. It's just how much do you want to gamble on that? And then, of course, the opposite scenario is if you do decide that, hey, it's time to move on, we need to go in another direction. You're basically sort of hoping in that situation that he just doesn't go out and play well, and that, or if he gets hurt again, it sort of proves you right in that situation. I'm not saying I hope that he gets hurt, to be crystal clear. I'm just saying that it would prove that your decision was correct if that ended up happening. So, I mean, this is where I say it. You're just flipping a coin either way. If you release him, you're hoping he doesn't tear it up somewhere. If you keep him, you're hoping he tears it up here. And then the opposite result would be, of course, I don't know if I want to say catastrophic, but it would be far less than ideal. But whether a trade, cut, resigning, or I should say restructure, whatever it might be, is right around the corner, that's what I'm cheering for at this point. Just a resolution so we can move on and just kind of talk about something different, because obviously we've been talking about this Jaire thing for a while now, and I think everyone's ready just for some sort of solution one way or the other. Meanwhile, we did get a trade on Wednesday. George Pickens traded to the Dallas Cowboys. An interesting trade. There's some future 2027 pick swaps, like a 6th for a 5th or a 5th for a 4th, something in that regard. But for the most part, this is a 3rd round pick in 2026 that goes to Pittsburgh from Dallas in exchange for George Pickens. Interestingly enough, Dallas has said that they are not going to do any sort of re-signing or restructure of him right now, or extension of him right now, that this is going to basically be a 1 year, and then we'll see sort of thing for George Pickens, which makes sense based on, just some of the stuff that's gone on and seeing how he transitions to Dallas. I don't think I'd want to enter into a long-term contract with him, but you are giving up a 3rd round pick. I'm sure what Dallas is potentially banking on a little bit here is, we'll trade a 3rd round pick now. We'll get him for this year. Even if he walks in free agency, we'll get a 4th round comp pick down the line. So there's probably, you're mitigating your losses to some extent if that ends up happening that way. For Pittsburgh, they seemingly wanted to move on. They did move on. They get the 3rd round pick in the draft next year when they host the draft in Pittsburgh. It seems to be a potential win-win for both sides. I like this deal a little bit better for Pittsburgh than I do for Dallas, but if you would have asked me what I thought Pickens probably went for, I probably would have said something like the 4th round range. So they give a 3rd, and again, they're probably going to get some comp pick back, or they get a really good receiver and they keep him for a while. For Dallas, it makes sense, for CeeDee Lamb to be able to play a little bit more in the slot, or you can use them both out wide, Pickens on the outside. I think it just gives them a little bit more playmaking, something that they really needed because they didn't have the receivers outside of CeeDee Lamb. Ferguson's a solid tight end, but not explosive or dynamic. And then you don't have that really playmaking running back right now either. there was just going to be so much heavy lifting on CeeDee Lamb. I don't think that was a way to go about it. Now they've got another playmaker. I think this is a deal that for the most part makes sense for both sides, but I do like it for Pittsburgh a little bit better. I did pose the question, since we now know that George Pickens went for a third rounder, and since Green Bay spent a third rounder on a wide receiver, would you have rather had, with that third round pick, George Pickens or Savion Williams? Maybe I'll save this discussion for another day because it could probably make a little bit more of a longer topic here. But let's just say that there were some very, very, very strong opinions on both sides. So chime in the chat below. What would you have done? You obviously, maybe you've already responded on Twitter or voted on Twitter, but would you rather have spent that third round pick on George Pickens, or would you rather have spent it on Savion Williams? It's an interesting conversation. I'll get to it, I'm sure, at some point. All right, that brings us to our main conversation for today, which is, of course, Micah Robinson. Had the opportunity to go through, watch all of his tape at Furman, and then, of course, this past year at Tulane. He's a fun player. If you want like the one-line elevator speech of just the kind of key takeaway, he continued to get better year over year and had his best season yet at Tulane. When he went to a stronger level of competition, he played his best brand of football yet. That's, I think, the positive takeaway. We'll get into that in our positives as well and kind of our overall breakdown. But if you want the one-line elevator pitch or speech, that's what you're kind of looking at here. All right, details. 5'10 and a half. He's a cornerback out of Tulane, spent 4 years at Furman, 1 year at Temple. He's a fifth-year senior, just turned 23 in February. I didn't write down his weight, but I believe he's in the 180-ish pound range. So usually Green Bay likes to go a little bit heavier than that. But he does play a little bit larger, I would say, than that size from a physicality standpoint. So 185 is what they listed him at. So 5'10 and a half, 185. Again, fifth-year senior, just turned 23 in February. From an athleticism standpoint, had a 6.77 relative athletic score at corner, 52nd percentile height, 31st percentile weight. Again, usually something Green Bay kind of stays away from, but they made the exception here in the 7th round. They're usually a little bit more apt to make those exceptions. 63rd percentile bench press, 56th percentile vertical jump, 70th percentile broad jump, 95th percentile 40-yard dash, 90th percentile 10-yard split. That was a 4.38 40-yard dash, by the way. So pretty freaking fast. A 53rd percentile 3-cone. And you might just pause right here and say, okay, like he's right at the 50th percentile for height. He's a little bit underweight, but that's not a huge deal. Above average bench, above average vertical jump, above average broad jump, unbelievable 40-yard dash, great 10-yard split, above average 3-cone. Like this is like he's got kind of everything. And then you get to the short shuttle, 8th percentile short shuttle, just an absolutely abysmal score. Now, the hope is that he just had a bad day or biffed it or didn't prepare for it the way that he should have. And maybe it's not quite that bad. But as Justice talked about on the episode the other day, it does show up on tape, that the lack of change of direction and that short shuttle, whether maybe it could have been a little bit better than that, it does still give you some cause for concern. Now, the 3-cone was good. Those are the 2 agility scores. So the agility for the 3-cone was in the 53rd percentile, but that short shuttle in the 8th percentile for corners is definitely a little bit of a red flag. His athletic comp, his number 1 athletic comp is Denzel Ward on the RAS site. So that's a good athletic comp to have. Denzel Ward's obviously had a really nice career in the NFL for the Cleveland Browns and was a very early, I think, top 5 pick in his draft class. From a PFF standpoint, in 2020, he had a 56.2 grade on just 39 snaps, a 53.9 coverage grade. In 2021, he had a 76.2 grade on 451 snaps with a 78.2 coverage grade. In 2022, had a 73.5 grade on 600 snaps, a 75.1 coverage grade. In 2023, had a 69.4 grade on 472 snaps and a 69.6 coverage grade. And last but not least, in 2024, for Tulane, his only year at Tulane, had an 84.3 grade on 546 snaps and an 80.7 coverage grade. In 2020, he was targeted he had 21 coverage snaps, was targeted 7 times, gave up 4 receptions, 57.1% completion percentage for 66 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions, and an 89.0 passer rating. In 2021, had 214 coverage snaps, 29 targets, 16 receptions, 55.2% completion percentage, 172 yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks, a 95.8 passer rating. In 2022, 378 coverage snaps, 66 targets, 40 receptions, 60.6% completion percentage, 451 yards, 4 touchdowns, 3 picks, and 82.3 passer rating. 2023, 270 coverage snaps, 52 targets, 31 receptions, 59.6% completion percentage, 387 yards, 4 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, a 92.4 rating. And then finally, 2024, again at Tulane, 294 coverage snaps, was targeted 48 times, allowed only 22 receptions, 45.8% completion percentage for only 252 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions, and a 51.7 passer rating, a really good year statistically in 2024. In his career, had 1,177 coverage snaps, 202 targets, 113 receptions, 55.9% completion percentage, 1,328 yards, 11 touchdowns, and 7 interceptions. He also played 472 career special team snaps with 173 on kick coverage, 104 on the punt return team, and 37 on punt coverage, with another 139 on the field goal and kick block units. A lot of special team snaps, a lot of DB snaps. He's got good experience and, as mentioned earlier, continued to get better. And again, his best season was his final season statistically at Tulane. Some miscellaneous notes here: was second team All AAC at Tulane, was a top 30 visit for Green Bay, was not invited to the scouting combine. So this was a draft, one of the draft picks that was not invited to the scouting combine, was the 2024 AAC defensive MVP. He was not listed on the 712 player consensus big board. Micah Robinson was nowhere to be found on it. However, he was Dane Brugler's 50th ranked corner, not 50th ranked defensive back, not 50th ranked player in the draft, his 50th ranked corner in this draft. In fact, Dane did scouting reports for 49 corners in this draft. And then number 50 was Micah Robinson. And then he had like another like 100 players listed after that. But he was 50. So again, not like anything crazy terrible, but 50th ranked on Dane Brugler's list. Let's get to some strengths and weaknesses. The number one strength, very clear here, is 4.340 speed. When you get to the 7th round of the draft, what you're looking for is a superpower, a trait that you can lean on. If they've got one thing, you're hoping that some of the other stuff can kind of develop over time. And that one thing can be the thing that either separates them and makes them special at the NFL level, or gives them a puncher's chance while they figure out the rest of the stuff. This is a really lame analogy, so my apologies for it in advance. But this is when I used to actually be good at Madden, which is a long time ago. But whenever I would first get Madden, I would always take a mobile quarterback. I would always take whether it be a Michael Vick or Vince Young or somebody, because I knew I could always rely on the running ability if I needed it, while I sort of picked up everything else throughout the course of the game. Like that was going to be, everything else was going to be a work in progress, but I always knew how to run with a quarterback. That was sort of the crutch to begin with. And then as time goes on and you get good at the rest of the game, now you can go to the pocket passers and things like that. You don't need sort of that crutch anymore. In the NFL, when you're at 7th round pick or you're a late round pick, you want that one thing that you can sort of count on to begin with. And in this case with Micah Robinson, it's his 4.3940 speed. And when you have that going for you, that's always going to give you a little bit of a puncher's chance. It's going to let you stand out a little bit more. And it certainly did. And it served him really well in his college career. And hopefully now it's going to serve him well in the NFL career. And then eventually, as he probably slows down over time, or as the game slows down to him, he doesn't need to just rely on that 4.3940 speed. The hope is that he develops his game more and everything slows down for him and he can become a more well-rounded corner that's not just based on pure speed. So that's kind of the hope here, is that he's got that one thing that he can rely upon for now. And certainly that one thing is that pure speed. In fact, it's sometimes the 40 doesn't always match up with the game speed, but he had an in-game speed of 22.1 miles per hour, which was also in the 96th percentile of on-field athletes. So not only is he very fast from a testing time, but he also tested, or at least had a very high speed in college, which should also indicate that speed is very much there. One of the other real positives, he only had 1 penalty in all of 2024. This is not somebody that gets grabby at the catch point. Now, a lot of his coverage is in zone coverage, at least when he's playing well. But he does play some man-to-man as well, specifically this past year at Tulane and at Furman in the past. And he has not been somebody that has been very prone to getting a bunch of penalties. And again, usually what that shows is that you're playing with confidence. You're not getting grabby or panicky at the catch point, and you're not all of a sudden just, pass interfering or getting too grabby with players. that usually, again, shows a good level of confidence. And the fact that he only had one penalty this past year when making the transition to Tulane and a higher level of competition, I think is a very good sign. Next thing I'll say is he plays the game the right way. He plays with a attacking mentality, with a good intensity. He's always rallying to the football, plays with good energy, and it's good, clean football. It's not always perfect. We're going to certainly go through a variety of his weaknesses today, but you watch him play and he's playing it the right way. So this is somebody that's had a grind. This is not a, 5-star recruit that ended up at Georgia. This is somebody who had to start at Furman just to work their way up to Tulane, just to try to get themselves in draftable conversation to get drafted by the Packers very late in the 7th round of a draft. He's had to work for it. You can tell. And again, I think it leads to him really kind of playing the game the way that it's supposed to be played. From a sort of scheme fit standpoint, he has fantastic instincts in zone coverage. He is very much best with his eyes on the quarterback, plays much better in zone, and he has a really good knack for knowing when to fall off of his guy and going to attack elsewhere. In fact, he had at least 3 interceptions that I saw where he went away from the guy that he was in the zone for, read the quarterback, jumped a player somewhere else, and went up and made an interception. So he's got great zone instincts, knows where to be, knows where to go, knows how to fall off a guy when need be, and knows how to go and make plays. He's a very good fit within a zone defense, specifically a zone defense like Jeff Hafley's, and he knows how to read a quarterback and then go make those plays. That's when he's at his best. If you are asking him to play a bunch of man-to-man, it's probably not going to go well. We'll talk about that in the weaknesses. But if you're asking him to play a lot of zone defense, use that speed to close to the receiver, have him be a willing tackler, and go make some plays in the passing game, he can do all of those things. That's why I think he was probably a very strong scheme fit here for the Packers and somebody that they felt comfortable taking in the 7th round. I also thought early in his career, it didn't really look like he was a 4.39 40 guy. But I would say in 2023, the year before he went to Tulane, is when I don't know if he just, went through a speed spurt. I know you can have a growth spurt. I don't know if you can have a speed spurt, but he looked much faster in 2023. I don't know if he was just trusting his instincts more or just playing faster. I'm not sure what it was, but you could tell there was a little bit of a jump in speed, and then that carried over into 2024. So that really continued to improve. And then, of course, we saw, again, the high-end testing time, the 4.39 40, as well as the 22.1 miles per hour reached this past season, which is on a play we're going to talk about momentarily. One of the things that he does well off of the corner position as an outside corner is he disguises blitzes really well. And when you do have that pure speed on the outside, if a quarterback's not expecting it, all of a sudden, you're expecting that, if you check the other way, if you go right and they're coming off the left side, maybe your blind side, and you're not really projecting that guy to come off the edge, all of a sudden you get to the other side and Micah Robinson is right there in your grill. I really liked how they utilized him on those plays. And so many times, especially if you're an outside corner, it is so easy to tip those blitzes because you're chomping at the bit to get over there and I'm going to get to the quarterback. And you hear a cadence and all of a sudden you give a tell that you're coming. I thought he did a great job of disguising it. And he was really kind of fun as an outside blitzer at that corner position. So something that if he gets in the game, actually, they could potentially use with his speed on the outside. I thought he really improved his physicality and his tackling in 2024. Early on at Furman, I did not think he played willingly. He was a willing tackler. He was willing to come up and make plays, but I thought his physicality and tackling were really lacking. There's still going to be some issues, which we'll talk about, but I thought he really improved it at Tulane and showed that he could be not only a willing tackler, but a little bit more physical and a little bit more able to get guys on the ground when he was coming up to make those plays. He's consistently showing good effort. Talk about a play that he had in just a moment. Actually, yeah, I think we can talk about it now, actually. He had a play where it was against Army, and it was in a bowl game at the end at Tulane. And I talked about this a little bit when I think we did our day 3 breakdown or kind of recap. But he's on one side of the field, and Army runs a run play all the way to the other side, and the running back's just gone. And Micah Robinson, on a dead sprint, angles as best as he can and cuts the running back off. This is like a 70-ish yard run, I want to say. Cuts the running back off at about the 2 or 3 yard line, saving a touchdown on the play. That's where he reached 22.1 miles per hour. Easily could have just, stayed on his side, saw that the running back was about to be gone and just said, maybe jogged his way over there. Dead sprint, got there in time, made a big time tackle in their bowl game to stop a touchdown. It was an unbelievable play. And so not only do you see the effort, not only do you see the pure speed, you see he cares about it, and he made a big time tackle in a big time moment in a big time game. Those are the things you like to see. Again, he plays the game the right way. I love his effort. As I mentioned, 472 career special team snaps, which if you're a 7th round draft pick, where are you probably going to have to make your name? Probably on teams to begin with. If you want to make a team, you're going to have to probably make it on teams. Now, maybe not right now with the depth at corner. We'll see. You might just have a real great opportunity to make it as a corner, but more often than not, you're going to have to make it on teams. And then if you do make it, how do you give yourself an opportunity to show yourself? Well, you got to be active on the 48-man game day roster. And how do you do that? Being primary on multiple special teams units. And then all of a sudden, you're active on the 48-man game day roster. Now a corner or two goes out injured. Guess who's there? You, because you were called up or you were active because of your special teams ability. Now you get a chance at corner. Now you go out, hopefully show well, prove yourself, get an opportunity, and hopefully you can take it from there. But his special teams should give him a real opportunity to make the team. As I mentioned, continue to improve year over year. And I thought he got much better. And that's a big question, right? This is a player that, again, was not like this super huge top recruit, plays at Furman, and then goes to Tulane. And again, we're not talking SEC school here, but they played some big games and goes to Tulane, gets a better level of competition. And like, how is this guy going to respond? It easily could have been that he goes to Tulane and just does not fit, right? He was a big fish in a small pond. Now he goes to Tulane and it just doesn't work. I think he got better. And I think with better coaching, you could see his technique take a jump. And if you're Green Bay, the hope is that, he got better when he went to Tulane with maybe a little bit better coaching. Imagine what he can do with NFL level coaching. That's, I think, the positive sign here. But I did think he played his best football of his career in his final season, even though he was going against a higher level of competition. He had solid overall productivity and coverage throughout his career. Again, never had over like 100 passing yard or 100 passer rating allowed in a given season. This past year, a 51.7 passer rating. There are deficiencies in his game, which we are about to talk about in just a moment. But regardless of those, he continued to cover well all throughout his college career, regardless of whether he was at Furman or whether he was at Tulane. When he was tasked with shutting down players or, just whatever the ball was thrown his way, for the most part, he did a pretty darn good job in making sure that players were not having big days on his watch while he was in coverage. And he did a really good job of that all throughout his college career. Last but not least, I thought his footwork got a lot better over his career and specifically in his last year. And again, I don't know if all of a sudden he gets a little bit better coaching at Tulane than he had at Furman and is able to kind of take that next step. But I did think his footwork improved quite a bit as his career went along. As always, we've got some weaknesses as well. I wish there wasn't. I wish all these Packers draftees were flawless, but unfortunately they are not. The first one is just bulk and physicality. He's 5'10 and a half. He's 185 pounds. He's not the biggest guy, not the most physical guy. He's willing. And I did say, as I mentioned, I thought he got a little bit more physical and a better tackler in his last season, but there are just going to be some limitations. And speaking of those limitations, if you want to know what kind of doomed him in coverage at times, it wasn't always his like technique. It wasn't necessarily even just his his weight or anything like that. It was his length. When you have the 5'10 and a half plus, not the strong or the longest arms in the world, there were a lot of times in some of that zone coverage where quarterbacks were just able to get it a little bit over the top of him, and he didn't have quite that length to bat away plays. That happened on numerous different occasions where I think he was just a little bit longer, whether he would have been like 6 feet instead of 5'10 and a half, or if his arms were just maybe an inch or two longer. I think he maybe would have batted away quite a few more balls, but that lack of length definitely did hurt him in college and probably is going to hurt him even more in the NFL. As mentioned, tackling was better in 2024, but there definitely are some tackling issues at times. And there's just, bigger players give him problems. Just the lack of bulk that he has. It's tough to get those big guys down. And he struggles with trying to, kind of maintain physicality within the route as well if he's in man-to-man coverage. So bigger players, more physical wide receivers definitely give him a little bit more problems. Too many players just ran past him. Now, then, again, I should say this was earlier in his career. And again, I did mention it felt like he played faster 2023 and 2024. There's still just a few too many plays on tape where guys run away from him and or run past him on routes. That's got to get a little bit cleaned up because that 4.39, that really should not happen. He will take the cheese on double moves. So he'll bite, he'll take the bait, and then he gets burnt deep on it. He's got good recovery speed, obviously, but he doesn't have great change of direction, and that can end up being a problem. So he's got to be a little bit more safe on those double moves and making sure that he's not biting on him, because despite his great speed, he's not getting back involved in that play because he's biting too aggressively. Then by the time he gets that change of direction, and they're just going in the other direction, and at too high of a pace and too high of a speed. So that's going to be something he has to really improve upon, is not biting on those double moves. Change of direction. The short shuttle is legit. He does, struggle to flip his hips and run with wide receivers. That's going to be something that I don't know if he can improve, but if he can, he's going to want to try. I do think his overall upside is limited due to the lack of height, bulk, and change of direction. And if he gets a little bit bulkier, then you question, does he have that 4.39 speed? So you just end up in kind of this little bit of no man's land. I'm not saying he can't be a solid corner. I think he can. I'm just saying, like, it's going to be hard for him to reach an upper echelon level of corner, which you're not expecting as a 7th round guy. But if you're hoping that he can reach that, I think it's going to be a little bit tougher, just because I do think there are legitimately some physical limitations, whether it be with that change of direction or with the length and height that he just has at corner right now. He allows too many free inside releases that he just couldn't hang with. That's sort of a little bit of his kryptonite. Struggles in man coverage. Again, if you wanted to be a big time man-to-man cover team, I would not have recommended Micah Robinson to you. But with Green Bay going in this new sort of zone scheme that Jeff Hafley kind of put together this past year, I do think he's a very strong fit. And to me, he probably projects just more as a outside corner. I don't think he projects well as a inside slot guy, and certainly not a safety. So he is limited in the amount of versatility that he has as a defensive back. What he can bring to Green Bay in 2025, depth, developmental corner. I do think there's some potential upside here where he could work his way into a starting lineup if everything goes right over time. Some potential special teams ability. I do think he's a scheme fit within Jeff Hafley's defense. And I'll say it one more time, a player that continued to show growth year over year and is coming off his best season in 2024. My final thoughts here, I would have put a 7th round-ish grade, maybe high undrafted or priority undrafted free agent. You can see why Green Bay wanted to get ahead of the priority draft or undrafted free agents and just pick him up at the end of the 7th round. Make it that they get him on the team, especially with not having drafted a corner already. They probably wanted one at that point, and rather than trying to battle everyone else in undrafted free agency for Micah Robinson, just take him in the 7th, get it over with, and get your corner in the draft. And we'll see if he can come in and make any sort of impact this year or in the future. I don't think it's impossible that he can contribute in this scheme. I don't think it's probably best case scenario in year 1, but I wouldn't put it past him. I do think his speed plays, and I do think he's a very good zone, cover corner. And when you've had good coverage skills and have played well in zone and have a superpower, that's going to give you a chance. Do I think it's, again, an ideal situation? No, probably not. But I wouldn't put it past him that he could find a way to contribute in 2025. He's got a special trait. He's competitive, plays the game the right way, has been sort of overlooked throughout his career, is now going to get NFL coaching, and is hungry. It may not seem like it. We're not talking about checking all the boxes here, but that's a pretty good mix for a 7th round player. Similar time. He's got a special trait. He's very competitive, plays the game the right way. He's been kind of overlooked. He now gets NFL coaching after, playing at Furman and Tulane. I think it's going to be a higher level of coaching. And he's very hungry. You put those things together, and sometimes those are the things that, late round gems are made of. We'll see. I'm not predicting anything here. I'm not saying he's going to all of a sudden become this, next Sam Shields, who I know is an undrafted free agent, but you get the point. But I do think he has some things to work with. If I were the, Packers defensive backs or cornerbacks coach, I'd be excited to get him in and see what we can make out of him, because I do think there are some traits here that you can really, really like. He's probably going to compete with Kamal Haddon and Kalen King for those back 1 to 2 sort of corner spots. He has every right to earn that spot. The special teams is going to go a long way. There could be 1 or 2 spots there for, as of right now, for King, Haddon, and Micah Robinson. And I think it's going to be a really fun kind of free-for-all between those 3 to see who gets those 1 to 2 spots. And I do think Micah Robinson has a really good chance to earn one of those. It's a fun player. I don't have super high expectations, but I'm intrigued. I think he has the ability to be a good player. I think you found a good value here in the 7th round. They said 7th round UDFA would have been fine with either, but no issues with Green Bay taking him here. And I do think there is some potential upside. So I'm excited. I think he's an intriguing player, and I'm interested to see what he looks like in OTAs, mini camps, training camp, and if he does have something he can bring to the team in 2025. That is going to do it for me today. Can't believe we only have one deep dive left. To give you a heads up, my plan over the next few days, John Williams deep dive tomorrow, the final 7th round pick. Then I'm going to go with Isaiah Simmons, probably for Saturday. Then I'm hoping to finish up our kind of deep dives with a full undrafted free agent class sort of review on Sunday. I'm going to have to watch a lot of tape between now and then to get through all 10 of those guys. So we'll see if I can do it or not. But if so, that'll probably be Sunday's episode, and then we'll kind of go from there. Cannot thank you guys enough for being here and making Pack a Day part of your daily routine. Shout out to our All-Pro and Hall of Fame members, Mo State Minnesotan, PJ Wynn, John Wild, Brandon Paletta, Boom Handle, Donald Lee, Lori Lord, Baby QB, David McCluskey, Donald Decker, Alex Wong, Peter Ataka, Jay Zimmerman, B. Brown, Puerto Rican Packer, Dan Gassford, Dylan Pat Scott, Bobby Santoro, SoCal Pack, Chris Rager, Izzy Roberts, Ian Ewing, Razul Douglas Time, Jake Koner, Carla Delgado, Willie Winklestinkle, Jen Wright, Ian Hewell, and Matt Geiger. I'll see you guys tomorrow. But until next time, and as always, go Pack Go.